So, hey, Mike, prior to using Sun's products, the only AR barrels that I had used were either stainless steel precision, tack driver SPR style barrels, or your standard chrome line, usually coal hammer forged barrels. I had very, very little experience using melaniting or regular button barrels or whatever. Can you kind of explain to me the difference between them in terms of performance and other things?
Yeah, I think so. There's a demonstrable difference in service life between like stainless steel and then ordnance grade like 4150 CMV or MIL-B-1159 Echo, right? So between the material differences between like stainless and then like a fighting grade barrel, that ordnance grade steel, there is a significant difference in service life there. That's something we can demonstrate across the board. Interestingly enough, if you're using the correct ordnance grade steel between hammer forged chrome line barrels or well-made QPQ treated barrels, the performance gap between those is insignificant if at all. What we noticed was because we did this, right? So I mean we looked really long and hard into whether or not we were going to switch our SKUs or to even just adopt on top of our stuff cold hammer forged barrels. And so we started doing a lot of testing. I mean, a lot of destructive testing. We would take sample sizes of this identical barrel, and then cold hammer forged chrome line versus the QPQ barrels, and then even testing within those lots. Okay, we did a lot of destructive shit to these guns, and what we noticed was there was a testing overlap. Right, you could take the worst performing barrel from this lot and the best performing, or the worst performing, and we would see those numbers actually overlap. There was not a definitive answer to which one of those things were better. Another thing too is like, how do you define service life? Is it port erosion? Is it throat erosion? Is it a deviation in muzzle velocity? Have you lost a significant amount of muzzle velocity? Has the group size opened up to some unacceptable number? In the military, I believe if once your group size on an M4 opens up to like 3.5 minutes or beyond that, that's when that barrel is considered shot out. Bench rest shooters, once they lose like a tiny bit of muzzle velocity, that's when they consider their barrel shot out. So it depends, I think, on how you're defining that. If you notice, there is no rifle manufacturer or barrel manufacturer that I'm aware of that guarantees at least a minimum service life. Because if you're adding a suppressor to the gun, like that heat transfer, that could start eroding that barrel faster. If you're using bimetal jacketed bullets, if you're subjecting the gun to some crazy firing schedule, all full auto, or so what's happening to that barrel? What our policy is, Sons of Liberty, is that if you shoot out a Sons of Liberty barrel, we'll replace it for free. Okay? I know of no other company that offers that. And so if I didn't have a lot of confidence in that barrel, I certainly wouldn't be offering that. And people ask me, like, hey, that's crazy. How can you afford to do that? Well, if you're the kind of shooter that shoots that hard, that you're actually shooting the barrel out, I want you to keep shooting, because whether you know it or not, you're a brand ambassador for Sons of Liberty. You are selling a lot of guns for me, because if you're taking that many training courses, if you're competing that hard, if you're training that hard, you're probably the guy that your friends ask weapon advice from, right? It behooves me to keep that dude shooting no matter what. I can tell you this, we're going on our 6th year now, we're entering our 6th year of business, and we have thousands and thousands and thousands of these barrels out in the world. We don't replace very many. Machine gun rental ranges, we've replaced some from there. We've replaced stainless steel match barrels, because that is a demonstrably shorter barrel life. But our fighting barrels, no, they're out there. Remember, our demographic, our target audience are people that actually fucking shoot. So, I mean, to go into like the differences there, I mean, I'm all ears if there's any kind of independent data out there that clearly demonstrates this stuff, because I know that through our own testing, it was inconclusive, and even I was surprised by that, because we've kind of begun to accept by doctrine that that this is inherently better than that in this particular process. And I gotta tell you, the data really doesn't support that completely. So go shoot the hell out of them. If you break one, we'll put your picture above the bar and send you a new barrel.
Yeah, I can tell you from my personal experience, 5,000 rounds in a more relaxed firing schedule versus 5,000 rounds in an intensive firing schedule is a completely different ball game. You know, I had range days where I was training with Jerry Micklick, and we were 500 rounds in on the AR in 2 hours. We started it at 8 a.m. and it's 10 a.m. and I've fired 500 rounds through my gun. And I've seen some military grade barrels that were absolutely gauged and fine at 10,000 rounds, and the exact same barrel with the exact same military ammunition was shot out in a different guy's gun at 6,500 because he was shooting a much higher rate of fire in a shorter period of time and mostly suppressed. So that heat, and heat is a function of how often are you shooting the next flame job going down the barrel, and then how much of that heat transfer back is it's actually absolutely killer. It's metallurgy.
So when we were doing this, the part I think that surprised me the most in our own independent testing is, I mean, this is a question, you know, as a gun manufacturer, look how much thought we put into a spring that we use, you know. I mean, look how much thought we put into, you know, a lot of the stuff that we're doing. So, I mean, obviously, I think the barrel is probably the most significant, you know, component in the rifle. And so we really wanted to answer this question. We really wanted to understand this. And what was the most surprising thing is that we would test this lot against this lot of these different barrels, but even within that same lot of all barrels made by the exact same process that were identical in every way, okay, even the service life within that varied significantly.
Right.
Significantly, even though we tried to keep the firing schedules as similar as possible. I mean, you're talking 20, 30, 40% sometimes difference in what those things would do. And that's when I quickly realized why companies don't offer a minimum guarantee for round counts, because you can, right? The way I approach that, since I can't tell you this barrel is going to last 18,107 rounds, I can't tell you that. What I can tell you is if you shoot one of these things out, I'll replace it. And that, I think it says a lot about the confidence we have in the barrels that we're using here.
And so if you wanted to just give the customer what they were asking for, and you knew that there were these buzzwords on the internet, and you're like, okay, well, everybody thinks chrome line, cold hammer forged are the best. We're just going to throw those in the Sun's guns. What's the difference in those two types of barrels, cost-wise?
I mean, it's significant. It's probably about, close to double.
Close to double.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you look at some of the well-made hammer forged barrels on the market that I have, barrels that are very good. I have nothing against those barrels. They're awesome. I have several. You're talking about, $340, $360 in there, and our barrels at retail for about $180. So the hammer forging machines, the hammer forging process, and the chrome lining, that is it's a more expensive way to make a barrel. It just is. They're inherently more expensive barrels. The performance gap does not justify that by any means. Like if you showed me that barrel lasted twice as long, then I could justify spending twice the money. But that's not the case. I mean, we're talking about, we saw overlapping test results where there is no definitive answer, and I encourage people to go out and do their own independent research, not from Mike from Sons Liberty and not from Bob Hammer Forge guy. Go find some independent testing data out there and see if it can, by what margin was what's going on. And I was surprised at the answer to that myself, honestly. And I was really surprised by our own testing, and we're pretty confident in our barrels.
All right, well, there you have it, Internet.